First tonight, advice often given to aspiring writers is to simply write what you know. That's easier said than done when what you've known is isolation, abuse, and survival.
But that's exactly what first-time author Rebekah Lowell has done in her novel, The Road to After. 207's Beth McAvoy sat down with her at the Biddeford Public Library, where Lowell works.
Surrounded by books is not a bad place to be for a writer. The stories on these shelves have particular meaning to Rebekah Lowell, in part because they've been a source of comfort and escape during the most challenging years of her life. They've also given her the confidence to build a new one.
Courage, it's not the absence of fear, it's doing the hard thing even though you feel the fear.
Rebekah's new life began when she took her 2 daughters and left a decade-long abusive marriage where she experienced extreme intimidation and isolation.
I have a large family. I'm one of 6 children, and it's hard to think back and realize that I didn't really see them for about 3 years. I missed out on a lot. I was only towns away, but I only saw them once or twice in 3 years and really couldn't communicate.
The Road to After, you say clearly, is not an autobiography, but it's based on similarities in your own life.
It's a young girl who leaves this abusive situation with her mom and her younger sister, and suddenly the world feels almost too big, and she doesn't know how to process it, because as dangerous as her life was, predictability almost feels safer than freedom in the beginning for her. And in finding comfort in things like nature journaling or gardening or noticing birds, she also opens up. So it's like this parallel with the natural world and her own inner life. And the family finds freedom together, and they find comfort in nature.
Lacey is your main character, and yes, she has this
Yes.
great connection to the natural world, to
Yes.
plants and animals, but a lot of that is from your own experience in life,
Yes.
correct?
Yes. Writing this out, I feel like, was cathartic and almost selfish, because as I was writing it, I was recovering. And I started writing the book immediately, as I said, immediately after I left. I was actually living in a women's shelter in Caring Unlimited when I first formed this book.
It took 6 years of writing, drawing, and revising for Rebekah to finish her first novel. With every word written, each new sketch, she slowly began to heal.
I just continued to write and draw, and it helped me so much to see the parallel with the natural world, because I've always turned to nature for comfort. And then also fictionalizing it provided some freedom for me too, because suddenly the characters weren't us.
While the book deals with heavy themes, it lacks graphic details of abuse, which is one of the reasons Rebekah says it's recommended for readers starting in 5th grade.
We give kids less credit than they deserve, and kids are smart, and kids deal with tough stuff. And so I feel like they need books on tough stuff in order to process it. And if a child hasn't had this reality, which I hope they haven't, it helps them grow empathy for those who have. And maybe it will help them reach a hand out to someone that they see is suffering.
Rebekah's novel is dedicated to her daughters, who she writes gave her the strength to take the first step. Sharing a story with parallels to her own past has taken courage she never knew she had.
There's always a fear in the back of my mind that the person who hurt us for so long might get upset because he's still around. So I am always looking over my shoulder, and we have to live life a little differently because of that. But I also debated, like, do I use a pen name? Do I, just hide? But I didn't want to hide anymore. And that's also why I used my real name, why I told the story. Because I lived in fear for so long that I don't want to I may feel afraid, but I don't want to let fear control my life. And so that's why I did it.
How is life now, and how do you continue to move on?
So I also still have the close support of my family and friends, and we all live nearby, so I get to visit my family now. I get to see them. I call my mom. I help her out. I garden. I raise monarchs. I released 415 monarchs last summer. So I spend a lot of time in nature. My daughters are part of the Maine Young Birders Club, so we go out and do outings with them. I teach nature journaling workshops. So I'm still immersed in the world of nature and healing and recovery. And it feels good to be able to do what I love.
There's a lot to think about in that conversation. One of just many points is really interesting what she said about kids deal with tough stuff and they
Yeah.
need books that address that tough stuff.
Right. And I also loved her right off the bat saying courage is not the absence of fear, but feeling that fear and endeavoring anyway to move forward. What a brave woman. What an amazing story.
And I love that, and I love that final note too about how she raises monarch
Yes.
butterflies, released more than 400 monarchs.
Right. Incredible.
Again, Rebekah Lowell's novel is called The Road to After. She's already working on her second novel, and her first picture book, called Catching Flight, is going to be coming out in March.
Lowell is a board member at Caring Unlimited, the Maine women's shelter that helped her to get back on her feet. If you or anyone you know is experiencing domestic violence, you can call 800-799-SAFE, and that is a 24-hour hotline.